I'm Duane McDiarmid. I'm a 59-year-old male subject, the father of two. I have a 19-year-old and a 6-year-old. I'm an artist by profession, and I make my living teaching. When I was a little kid, Harlan and I, we were really into like natives. We read National Geographic, looked at books in the library from faraway countries. We loved to be outside and in nature and running around. And we had this sort of fantasy of like if that was all of life. And so for us, that was, these sort of pre-modernization, pre-industrialization sort of cultures that were primal. We kind of fancied that. One time when Harlan was over playing at my house, probably spending the night, we were like co-fantasizing as we did as part of our play. And we said something about how that we were going to go to Australia when we were 18. And my brother overheard us. And he was like, no, you're not. You're never going to Australia. You're so full of shit. You're not going. And it just made me so mad. I just became bound and determined. If I was going to do fucking anything, I was going to go to Australia when I was 18. By this time, my parents are divorced. My mom is a Head Start teacher, making like nothing. She's got 4 kids. Like, we don't have shit. And I have this idea that I'm going to Australia. And so it's like, yeah, sure. But, if you're going to Australia, you're taking yourself to Australia. This is not going to be like a graduation present or something. As a lot of Minnesota kids did, in the summer, we could work at corn plant. Because we lived in the valley of the Jolly Green Giant. There's a giant statue of the Jolly Green Giant on the side of the highway. It was like 3 stories tall. I worked 6 days a week, and I think it was a 12-hour shift. Because when the corn comes, you got to get it in. You got to get it in cans. So that's what I did. I got my Australia money. And I got off the plane in Australia on my 18th birthday. Harlan moved away, so I was not going with Harlan. And then my sister said, well, I'll go. So, my sister and I are in Australia, and one of the things we've spent our money on is train passes. So we can travel all over the continent of Australia by train. Because we're going to be there all summer. We're there for 3 months. If you're going to spend the airfare to go, you're going to go, right? We spent a few days in Sydney. We spent a number of days in Sydney. People are really great. We're having a good time. And then we get on the train and we go up to Brisbane and the Gold Coast. And we don't have enough money to go out to the Barrier Reef, which sort of sucks. We're staying in youth hostels now. And there ends up being this like giant national strike in Australia. And so none of the trains are running. And on top of that, like for some reason, none of the banks are open. Like the whole goddamn country kind of shuts down on us. And we're running out of money. We've got traveler's checks, but we have to change them at the bank or the money changer, and they're all closed. Everybody at this youth hostel is kind of in the same boat, right? We're all kind of marooned in Brisbane. And Brisbane is not the greatest. The reason you go to Brisbane is to get a boat over to the Reef Islands, but we don't have enough money to do that. Anyway, people start leaving by hitchhiking out of town. So, we talk it over and we go like, yeah, we are not going to fucking sit in Brisbane, waiting for this strike to end. We're going to keep going. And the people who are leaving by hitchhiking. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to hitchhike. So we get out, we check out of the youth hostel, we get out on the road and we hitchhike. And, it works out okay. We get some rides and we're moving up the coast, up into the tropics and, seeing sights and doing interesting things and staying interesting places. And we're getting a lot of charity as well. Because we're a brother and sister, 18 and 19 from the US, hitchhiking in Australia. And a lot of people picking us up hitchhiking are giving us stuff to eat or stopping in a restaurant and feeding us. And we're really hospitable and nice. So it's working out okay. Our money's going pretty far. We're traveling. We're meeting like real Australians. And then one day, we're hitchhiking and this, what they call a panel van pulls up. It's like a Chevy Suburban with no windows except for in the cab. It's kind of a scary vehicle. This thing, pulls up and stops. And whenever you're hitchhiking, the car parks ahead of you. So you're running up to the back of the car, right? Because it has to sort of slow down and stop. And in the back windows of the panel van, there's these black curtains. And there's a button there that says like Sex Pistols. And you got to understand, this is 1979. So I had heard of the Sex Pistols because all the parents in Minnesota were like talking about how god awful and scary what was happening in England was. And like Time magazine had done a thing on, like the Queen ain't no human being and so to me this is like danger. And my sister and I, we look at each other like danger, the Sex Pistols, But do you stay on the side of the road or do you take the ride? And so we decided we'll take the ride. So we get in to take the ride, and the guy is he's an Australian guy. He's got shaved head. He's about our age, but he's a punk. He's a punk rocker, and we're like Midwestern American college professor children hippies. It is what it is. But anyway, it turns out he's about our age. And he's from Australia, and he's decided that he just wants to see the continent. And we were like, well, that's what we want to do. We want to just see the continent. Anyway, we're driving along, and we're camping every night, and we're seeing kangaroos and wallabies. And he's got this thing where, at night, we're up in the tropics, so at night, we go into the pineapple fields and we poach pineapples. And in the morning, or whenever low tide is, we go down along the seashore and we find shellfish. And so we're living on pineapples and shellfish. It's kind of perfect. And we head out into the interior, away from the coast, because we've kind of reached as far north as we're going to go. It's Highway 1, and it's the only road, going west. But it's dirt, right, at this point. And one day we come across this car out in the desert, and it's just stopped on the side of the road. So we pull over, and we're like, what seems to be the trouble? And they're like, the car is fucked. The car is driven by an Aboriginal guy who's probably in his 20s, and he's got a wife and a couple of kids and a grandma and then a couple of other adults that I don't know exactly what the relationship is. I mean, there's 6 or 7 of them in the car. But we kind of go well, Matt and us have a little powwow and we say, well, we can't just leave them out here in the desert, We're really interested in them, because we're curious. And Matt seems to be completely cool as well. So, he goes we will take you anywhere you need to go. You load into our car. We got lots of room in the panel van. We'll take you wherever you need to go. And so the guy goes, you'll take us where we need to go, and yeah, we'll take you wherever you need to go. because we just want to see Australia. And so the guy goes like, okay, we're going to a gathering of our tribe. Will you take us there? And we're like, hell yeah, we'll take you there. So they all crawl into the back of the panel van. The three of us are in the front seat, because that's where we always are. And then we got all this space in the back, and we've got backpacks and tents and stuff, but there's enough room. And the guy is like leaning forward and telling us where to go. And we travel for about a day and a half. And we're not on roads anymore after the first day. We're like driving on like riverbeds and just like across that way, head for that mountain, We're like out in the total sticks, completely nowhere. And finally we come into this dry riverbed, some trees, and there's all these people there. And we pull up and we get out, and they all get out, and there's all this hugs and whooping, and everybody's like really, really happy. This old guy comes kind of waddling up to me, and he's got like one eye that is just, it looks like raw hamburger. Red, raw, wet, meaty socket. And he's kind of graying hair, and he's walking with a kind of humpy limp. He kind of scares me. I'm a privileged white kid from Minnesota, So I'm a little freaked out by this guy, and he puts his arms out, and he goes, "You're my brother." And he throws his arms around me, and he's like giving me this big hug, and I'm a little uncomfortable because I'm an 18-year-old boy, and this old man with raw meat eye is hugging me, and telling me he's my brother. Turns out that this guy with the bad eye is the father of the guy that we brought in. He's also the clan leader. So we're like the shit, because we're like these people that saved his son and grandkids and brought them to him. And so we're just getting the royal treatment, such that you can have the royal treatment when all you've got is rocks and lizards. But the kind of human warmth is just unbelievable. They're like the real deal Aboriginal folks out in the desert, and they're cooking cockatoos and bread, birds that we think of as being in the zoo, but are wild in Australia. And they're cooking lizards, and they're making bread and lizards and cockatoos. That's pretty much, what we're eating. And they've got beer. So we're drinking beer and eating cockatoos and lizards. It's fucking great. And they're like teaching us how to throw boomerangs, like not the kind the toys that come back to you kind, but the kind that you throw into a flock of birds to kill birds with and then eat them. And they're teaching us how to throw spears, and we're going lizard hunting during the day, We're just in this Aboriginal scene, which is what I've wanted my whole life, right? To be a native, And I'm like I'm having my experience. And then I'm out there and I'm running across this big sloped rock in the sun, chasing this lizard. And the way you lizard hunt is you have a whole handful of little spears. And when you scare a lizard, it starts to run. You usually can't see them till they move. And then you start throwing spears at them. And no one expects you to hit it with the first one, because they're lizards. And that's why you have this big handful of these little spears. And you run along after them, throwing spears until you get them, So I'm out there, and I'm doing this. I'm running around, learning how to hunt lizards. And it's hot, because it's the Australian desert. And I suddenly have this moment, right? I have this moment where I realize I'm in this dream that I always wanted to live. but that I'm not in it. Because the thought I'm having as I'm running after this lizard, throwing spears at it, being a native, is I'm thinking, boy, do I want an ice cream. And it just kind of hits me. I'm a modern person. I expect ice cream on a hot day. That's what I want. And I can learn how to lizard hunt, and I can run around with guys that hunt lizards, and they can embrace me as family. But I'm not. I can't be. Because my brain is all full of like the modern world. And even though I think that I hate all that, right? Like I actually like modern society. And it's like a crisis of identity. Because I've always sort of thought that I was this person who wanted to be this thing and that I was going to sort of live my life so that I could become this thing that I wasn't. And I'm suddenly realizing that I never can be. And it just gets worse and worse, you know, because that night when we're eating our lizards, I'm thinking like, God, ketchup would be good on this. And then it's like, fuck, there it is again. And I sort of got to this point where I realized that no matter what I loved and wanted to be, and no matter how critical I was of now, that I was now. I am now. Now is me. And that was like this lesson that I had to learn. And that's where and how I learned it. And we only stayed another 2 or 3 days. We could have stayed the whole 3 months. You know, and we said our goodbyes, and we drove back off the way we'd come and traveled around Australia, buying gas and going to grocery stores.